Today is the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva's yard site, a very, very special holy man. As we know, we've spoken about him before as being the founder of the 2 days, the 2 halachas a day of Shmiras HaLashon. He was a tremendous tzaddik, and we are zocher to have his beautiful sefer Year of Adas that was written by Rabbi Weiss Zatzal. And I think we're going to say over a beautiful idea that he says on this week's parsha, partly because it's his yard site, and also partly because I think it's a very important yesod. And I think it's a yesod that we can very much learn from and try to gain something from. So we have in this week's parasha, as we mentioned in the parasha share, we talked about the Aseret HaDibros, we talked about Shabbos Kodesh, and at the end of the Aseret HaDibros, Mamish right after Aseret HaDibros, the Torah says, "V'chol ha'omroin ha'sakodos v'ha'salapidim v'skol ha'shofer v'sahar ha'oshem v'yara ha'om v'anu v'yamdu merochoik skip a pasuk v'yem Moshe la'om al tiro, don't be scared, ki levavur nasois eschem bo ha'elokim." Kadosh Baruch Hu came to test you. Okay? Now I want to read you the words of the Ramban on that pasuk. The Ramban brings, this is Perek Chav pasuk Yitzayin. The Ramban brings a Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim. Okay? Where the Rambam says as follows, listen carefully. Ki Omar Lohem, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Klal Yisrael, Al Tiro, don't be scared. Ki Zeh Hashem Isim Hoya. Remember, just picture the scene. The Klal Yisrael are almost seeing the Rabbeinu Shalom's voice, Kaviyachol. They're seeing the thunder, the lightning. According to the Chazal, they died, they fainted as soon as they heard Anochi Hashem. The Rabbeinu Shalom had to revive them, and they had to hear it again only from Moshe Rabbeinu. They saw things that they can never see, that no one had ever seen and no one will ever see. They were on such an incredible level. Says the Rambam, Ki zeh asher v'isim hoya, shekeshi nisa Hashem al Elokim eschem, lohidia eirech emunoschem, v'yishlach lechem novi sheke, sheyutzi listo ma sheshamatem, loisamad ashereichem lo'ilem ederech ha'emes, ki kvar v'isim ha'emes b'neichem. Meaning, says the Rambam, there'll be a time where the Rabbeinu Shalom is going to bring a Novi Sheker. Novi Sheker is someone that comes along. The Rambam talks about this famously in Yesodei HaTorah at the end, where he talks about the idea of when to believe a prophet. And there sometimes have come along, and we've seen this in history of Klal Yisrael, that a Novi comes along and says things about that are Sheker, that are not true, in order to get people to go after him. Says the Rambam, this will happen in history, but don't worry. I've given you the koyach. I've given you the key, the recipe, in order to be able to withstand that. Because the Rebbeinu Shalom will test you then, Hashem came now, Kidei shetia omdim loy bechol nisayin. It's the lashon of the Rambam. So listen very carefully to how the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Tavracha understands Pshat in this Rambam. He says the Rambam is explaining something incredible. Why is it that Klal Yisrael, by Ma'amid Har Sinai, this week's parasha, were on such a high level? We almost became Nevi'im. Why? What did Kadosh Baruch Hu have to do that for? Kaviyachol saw the Rabbeinu Shalom. We were on such incredible levels. We were levels of Nevi'im, levels that Klal Yisrael were never at and never will be at again. Maybe the times of Mashiach. Why? What was the reason that we had to be there? Says the Rambam, because the Rabbeinu Shalom is going to come and test Klal Yisrael. The Rabbeinu Shalom is going to bring tests upon his nation, upon Klal Yisrael, throughout history, throughout the generations. And therefore there needed to be a Ma'amid Har Sinai. There needed to be one time in the history of Klal Yisrael that we were on such a high level, that we Kaviyachol saw the Rabbeinu Shalom, that we will then be able to withstand every Nisayin. The famous Hakdama in the Chinuch, if you've ever gone through the Chinuch, it's absolutely beautiful. Then the Hakdama, he writes over there about this week's parasha, about how important Ma'amid Har Sinai was for us now, 2021, in our generation, Tovshin Pei Aleph. Why? Because he says, never, by the way, and he points out that there is no other nation, and this, by the way, is historically been checked, there is no other nation that actually says that over 3 million of their own people were there witnessing something. Every other religion, the way they do it is, without going into names and details, he spoke to God. No one was there. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Yeah, he got a revelation. He spoke to God. I don't know. Here there are 3 million people there. And every single one of them came and said the same story and said it to their kids, said it to their kids, said it to their kids, who said it to us. So the chinuch, you cannot get a bigger proof than that. That's the highest form. That is the biggest proof that we have that Yiddishkeit is. But again, the Master Rosh Yeshiva Zazal is telling us what the Rambam is telling us, why we needed to be on that level. It was because we're going to be tested. Throughout our lives, there are going to be tests. The Master Rosh Yeshiva says there are 2 chidushim in what the Rambam explains. Chidush number 1 is that the Rabbeinu Shalom gave us Maimid Har Sinai in such a way so that we should be able to be Oimid B'Nisayin. We should be able to stand up to every test that we are presented with. Number 2, the Rabbeinu Shalom never tests a person if he will not be able to cope with that test, if he will not be able to withstand that test. And what's the biggest raya? The biggest raya is that if the Rabbeinu Shalom gives a person a sign, it means he has the koyach haraya, because we have Ma'amid HaSinai. And the Rambam learns the reason why Klal Yisrael needed to be on such a level was because we will be able to withstand all the tests, which means that any test that we get, we will be able to withstand. The Mesilas Yesharim famously says, Kol inyonei olam nisyonis heim la'adam. Everything's in a sign. We're living in a generation now where we have a lot of nisyonis. Things are not what they should be. Again, in inverted commas, of course, right? They are what they should be because this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted it to be. This was the plan. This is exactly what the Rebbeinu Shalom envisioned. And when it came to Rosh Hashanah, this is exactly what Kodesh Baruch Hu planned the world to be. But the way in our, physical, limited mind, this is not what it should be. Kids should be in school. Kids should be learning. People should be able to go to work in the normal way. People should be able to interact with their grandparents. This is not the way we envision the world to be. And people are going through a hard time. I get emails all the time from different organizations and schools. Can you speak chizuk, chizuk? The parents need chizuk, the boys need chizuk, the girls need chizuk, this one, everyone needs chizuk. Because we're living in a generation of being tested. And I think that the way the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva explains Pshat in the Rambam, that the Ramban brings in this week's parasha, is we have to realize, every nisayon that we get, and we all get nisayonos. We spoke about it by Shovavim. We got our own nisayonos. The Yitzhara is very, 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 very sharp. And he knows how to get a person. But every single situation we find ourselves is in a sign. The fact that we can't go out and do things that we normally want to do, we're not sure we're going to be able to come back after Pesach, not after Pesach. What's going to be? We don't know. Many people are going through nisayonos. Kids are stuck at home, not going to school. Parents are going crazy. This is not how we envision life to be. It's a nisayon. It's a test. What we have to realize is the Rebbeinu Shalom brought us this test, and there's a purpose for it. We may not know the purpose, we may not understand the purpose, we may never know the purpose, but that's irrelevant. If we are maminim b'nei mamin, if we believe that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us the Torah, chose us as His nation, and loves us, then we will realize that whatever situation we are put into, we have the koiches, we have the strength to be able to cope, and to be able to jump over that hurdle like every other hurdle. I'll give an example. Rav Vida Miller writes this on Chodesh Halavavos, that one of the examples he brings is during the 40 years that Klal Yisrael were wandering in the Midbar, just after they left Mitzrayim. These parashas, right? Moshe Rabbeinu says as follows. There's a pasuk in Devarim, Be'etzem, Perek Ches, pasuk Gimel, but it's talking about our parashas. Moshe Rabbeinu says like this: V'ya'amcha v'yarivecha v'ya'achicha es hamon asher lo yadata v'lo yodu navasecha leman hadiyacha ki lo al alechem levadoy yichya ha'odam. The Rabbeinu Shalom, Moshe Rabbeinu told Klal Yisrael, He afflicted you and He let you be hungry and then He fed you the mon. Now the mon was a very difficult test, right? Can you imagine eating the same thing every single day? We get complaints when we had that last week. The mon they had every single day. Can you imagine that means for breakfast, for lunch, and for supper, every single day they had the mon. Do you know what a test that is? But again, Moshe Rabbeinu said, because you have to realize, you don't only live on bread. In the Midbar, Klal Yisrael gained a clarity of perception that they realized that the food they needed only came from Hashem, and sometimes you have to be willing a little bit to suffer in order to get that bread. Now, that generation, let me tell you, became a lot better over the course of the 40 years. There is a Yerushalmi in Avodah Zarah. It's also similar to a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, where the Gemara says that the Kadosh Baruch Hu loved that generation more than any other generation. How do we know that? The Gemara in Sanhedrin says an incredible thing. He talks about a husband and wife's relationship. Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin like this. He says that a married man says to his wife, when our love was strong, we could have made our bed on a blade of a sword. But now that our love has grown weak, a bed of 60 cubits isn't large enough for us. In other words, the Gemara is telling us that the more love, the more tight, the more close. In the Midbar, right, the connection to Klal Yisrael is as follows, that in the Midbar, when Klal Yisrael in the Midbar, what did we need? A little Mishkan, small little Mishkan. Right, we could be so close, the love was so intense. But afterwards, when the Shekhinah wasn't as intense, then we needed a Beis HaMikdash, because a small place just wasn't big enough. We needed a bigger place. So we see the love that the Rebbeinu Shalom had for Klal Yisrael was in the Midbar. Why? Because we were tested. We were constantly being tested. And when you're being tested and you overcome that challenge, then all of a sudden the love that the Rebbeinu Shalom has for you and the love you have for Hashem is also that way. Rabbi say, let's take the lesson. Tremendous idea from this week's parsha. Moshe Rabbeinu says in this week's parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Vayomer Moshe la'am, al tiro, don't worry. Ki levavu nasas eschem bo'alekin, the Rebbeinu Shalom going to test you. And as the Ramban brings the Rambam, it's for a purpose for all future generations. That we know that in this generation, 2021, Tovshin Pei Aleph, when we're being tested, and we are, we should know we have the koyach. We have the ability to overcome that challenge. We have the ability to break through and to come to the realization that this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. This is the lechatchila of how the Rebbeinu Shalom set up the world. And when you think of it that way, that every challenge that we have, and many people have challenges, many marriages, people are suffering in marriage, relationships between their kids, schoolwork, learning, there's so much that's being challenged right now. But at the end of the day, if we would simply think about this, then we realize that, number one, this is exactly the way it's meant to be. This is for our good. This is how the Rebbeinu Shalom set up the world, so it should be this way. And number two, we have the koyach. We can overcome it. Yes, it may be difficult, but just because it's difficult doesn't mean we don't do it. Right? If a person knows that in order to make a lot of money, he has to go to the office and work very, very hard, for some reason he won't have a problem going into the office, even if it's very hard, because I'm getting money. It's good. When you know that something is right, you'll do it even if it's hard. Right? When a person wants to lose weight, when a person wants to become more fit, he'll go to the gym. It's so hard. He has to get up early. He has to go to the gym. He has to work out. It's sweaty. He has to go to the shower. It's a whole business. So why do you do it? Because you know that it's worth it. You know that it's good for you. It's the same thing over here. If we realize that this is how the Rebbeinu Shalom set up the world, he wanted us to try and see this is our personal struggle. In previous generations, our forefathers had much worse struggles. They had different struggles. I don't know, worse, not worse. It was worse. But the point is, they're different struggles. This is our struggle. And I think it's an important insight for life. Because at the end of the day, every single one of us, again, I'm not saying this and I wouldn't wish this on anyone, and no one should experience this, but the Mesilas Yesharim says that Kol Inyonei Olam Nisyonos Hem La'odam. Everything's in the same. Whether it's a bachur in yeshiva, whether you're trying to get married, whether you're trying to have children, whether you're trying to make a parnasa, whether you're trying to be healthy, whatever it is, everyone has their nisyonis. There isn't a person in the world that doesn't have a nisayon. And the Gemara says if you don't have a nisayon for 40 days, you should start to be worried that you're using up your olam haba. So everyone gets a nisayon. Everyone gets a nisayon. And a nisayon could be a simple thing. You put your hand in your pocket to take out 2 shekel, and you end up taking out 1 shekel, and you have to put it back in again. On a small level, that's a type of nisayon. It's annoying, right? You have to know how to deal with that. That's also a tzar. Yeah, sure. It's a type of tzar. It's a type of tzar that's calculated that you need to get it. It's in a sense how you're going to deal with it. How are you going to deal with it? Rabbi is saying in our lives, we're going to have nisyonos. Mitzvah Hashem, nobody should have nisyonos. But it's Mitzias is, unfortunately, Chazal tell us that's what's going to happen. The question is how are we going to deal with them? So I honestly believe if you have these 2 ideas in your head, number one, this is what Hashem wants from us. When Noach was in the Teva and he was busy becoming a farmer and a zookeeper, he wasn't complaining. You know why? Because I want to learn all day. I want to learn. Noach was a big tzaddik. He wanted to sit and learn, right? He was busy with the Rashba. So what was he busy feeding animals? Why was he complaining? The answer is because this is what Hashem wants from me right now. I've got to do what Hashem wants. Now, not all of us have that clear. We know exactly what Hashem wants. That's true. We have to figure that out. Sometimes you're put in a situation against your will. Like, for example, the generation that we're living right now. We don't have a choice. This is the Metzias that we're in. that means this is what Hashem wants from us. So number one, this is how it's meant to be, and there's a purpose for it, a greater purpose for it. And number two, we have the koyach. That's what the Rambam tells us from Maimon Dasin and this week's parasha. Every single one of us have the koyach, and Be'ez Hashem, we should be zoicha, every single one of us, to be we should be omid b'nesayin, that Be'ez Hashem, if anything comes our way, we should be strong enough to realize, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you, I'm going to deal with it. Is it easy? No. But that doesn't mean it's not right. And Be'ez Hashem, the Rebbeinu will give us all the koychos to be able to deal with all of our challenges in the right way, so that Be'ez Hashem, the Rebbeinu will see how much we're trying towards Him, and the love that we'll have for Him, and the love that will be reciprocated, that the Rebbeinu will give back to us, will be absolutely overflowing. Be'ez Hashem, Koyis Yeshuas Esa, Be'ez Hashem, the cup will be overflowing, and the Rebbeinu will give us tremendous Siyata Shmaya in our lives.